in a way, you've highlighted one of the big problems you're going to face going forward with the ground invasion. How do you tell somebody who's a combatant from a civilian? It's going to be incredibly difficult. General Petraeus again was talking about that. Let me ask you, you're an advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Many Israelis, I mean, the polling currently suggests that the majority of Israelis are absolutely furious at what they see as him dropping the ball in terms of security and intelligence, enabling Hamas to commit this outrage. Many think he should have resigned, but he hasn't even apologized publicly for those failings on October the 7th. Why not?
Well, first of all, Israelis are entitled to be angry. I mean, the Hamas, a brutal enemy, caught us unexpected, surprised. And there's a whole series of failures. I mean, you talk about at the top with the Prime Minister, but there's a whole series of failures that need to be investigated. Why was it that our intelligence didn't pick up on this brutal attack before it happened? I mean, we pride ourselves in Israel on having excellent intelligence services. We're very proud of our Mossad and the Shin Bet and so forth. And yet they took us by surprise. And that's, Israelis are asking what happened. And then there's how did they cross the fence at so many points and succeed in just coming and raiding our communities? I mean, we spent a lot of money and technology. We were told many times that the fence is impassable, and yet they just stormed it and came across our side of the
one of the reasons,
frontier.
One of the reasons, Mr. Regev, that people say the ball may have been dropped here in such a spectacular and deadly manner is because Prime Minister Netanyahu, for most of the year, has been fighting mass social protests and unrest over his attempt, as his critics put it, to usurp the authority of the Supreme Court, and that has distracted defence and intelligence operatives away from what they should have been doing, which is protecting the Israeli people from exactly the kind of attack that happened on October the 7th. And that for that reason, because it's all on Netanyahu's watch, and he's the one who's been waging this attack on the Supreme Court's authority and creating the social unrest, that because of that, he should take personal accountability and step aside.
So I think in many ways, I mean, we Israelis, as you know, have been having a very polarized political debate. We're very passionate about our politics in Israel, and there are people who hate the Prime Minister and there are people who love the Prime Minister. And our society has had this very, very, demonstrations against the government and demonstrations for the government and so forth. But maybe the brutal Hamas massacre on October 7th, that was to a certain extent a slap across the face. Because let's be frank, I know that part of the southern Israel where they struck and they killed our people. But, I mean, frankly, they massacred our people, yes? They didn't ask us how we vote. They went into kibbutzim, which are on the left, yes, and they went into Sderot, which is politically, it's a Likud bastion. They don't care if you vote left or right, if you're secular or religious, if you're for or against the government's proposed judicial reforms. They killed us. They killed us randomly. They killed us brutally. They beheaded us. They raped. They burnt people alive. You reported all this last night. I don't have to repeat the atrocities that were committed. And for Israelis who are passionate about their politics, and we like a good argument, but this is a wake-up call. And that is why you saw a major opposition party that has had nothing nice to say about the Prime Minister join the government for the duration of the conflict. This is a time for unity. This is a time to win. I mean, we didn't want this war. They declared it on us in their brutal attack. But now we have to win this war. And you've seen at the highest political level a major opposition party joining the government for the duration. And there will be a time when this is over. There'll be a time for politics. There'll be a time for lessons learned. After previous conflicts, we've had commissions of inquiries. We've had all sorts of investigations, parliamentary investigations, judicial investigations. I don't know what will happen this time. But it's, for me as an Israeli, it's very important that if there are lessons learned, that we learn those lessons. Yes, what happened on October 7th when they crossed the border the way they did, taking us by surprise, slaughtering our people, that's clearly something that needs to be examined very thoroughly.
When it comes to the moral line, what is your red line in terms of what Israel can do to get rid of Hamas? What would be too far for you? That's what people are asking right now. They understand that Israel is in a rage, that the people are shocked, they're in trauma. I've talked to Jewish friends of mine who feel genuinely fearful and traumatized by what has happened. There's no denying that. And the protests, the anti-Semitic nature of these protests since has been repellent and also adding to that fear. But what is the red line for Israel? I mean, is there a moral line that you won't cross here, or are all bets off when it comes to getting rid of Hamas?
First thing that needs to be said is that as much as people are angry, and rightly so, we haven't been shooting for the hip, and people have been talking about this ground invasion. What is it, for 2 weeks now, and it's still not happened? And so we are very thinking steps ahead. We're planning, we're preparing, and we'll go in where we're ready to go in. We're not acting out of rage. I mean, we're angry, but our behavior is judicious. And once again, we're looking not just what happens tomorrow, we're looking what happens next week and next month and next year. We're thinking this through very carefully.